All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for those of you on the other side of the United States. I wanted to welcome you to another episode of Trusted Voices, podcast that we do here at Ameren Critical Infrastructure and Ameren Risk. We really would value your interest and input. We also are curious about things you would like to hear. We've kind of cycled back into what we know, things we've heard through our interactions, and I think it's about time for us to kind of reach out and say, from the tribal communities and from those listening, what would you like to hear? So, any input you can give to us would be awesome because we would like to provide, make sure this is of value to you, and that we can provide input and information that pertains to your everyday lives the best we can. So, with that, we'll try and send some out here in the near future. Again, Felix McGowan here from Director at ACI. We are out there to try and help tribes wherever we can. And I think today's discussion is in the current state of unknown in the political system, is very, very relevant. Monica's going to get into this a little bit, but we are in an interesting state right now, with the way things are going on the East Coast, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen. But I think this whole thing is very valued, and this whole discussion will be interesting for everybody. So I appreciate your time. Um, Now I'm going to introduce Monica. Monica is a member of my staff here at Ameren. She is a key piece to what we do. Has done this type of work in her past, is a key work in our key researcher in our office that does a ton of work with grants and understanding what they require, portals to be used, all the different things that those of you in the grant world understand innately. But it can be kind of a nebulous piece. So Monica is an enrolled member at Fort Peck, the community where I spent all of my youth. So it's kind of cool for her and I to talk about things back home, even when we're not home every day. So with that, I'd like to introduce Monica. Monica, take it away.
Thanks, Felix. Appreciate it. Hey, I just want to say good morning to Candace, who's tuned in. Hey, Candace, thanks for joining us today. And I'm gonna, you should probably never do this, but I'm gonna remove my boss and get started with the presentation. So we are talking about upcoming grant opportunities for tribes, and Ameren Critical Infrastructure has worked with tribes to write grants, to administer grants. We have about $200 million worth of awards that we helped tribes win under our belt. And so, we're in an interesting time right now. Absolutely, very interesting time. And you might be asking yourself, grants in this administration? Why should I even bother? And the reason that you should bother is there's a couple of reasons. First of all, a couple of days ago, a federal court blocked the federal funding freeze that the Trump administration implemented. And so while the courts work those things out, there are still grants listed and deadlines coming up that have not been taken down. And so the other reason that I personally think that tribes should consider applying for grants is basically this is part of the trust responsibility. This is part of the responsibility the federal government has to tribes to provide funding. And when we as tribes apply for these grants and we put it on the record that the need is there, that's important because that's part of an official record that shows that efforts have been made or that the need has been put out there, basically. So, yeah, I really think that during this time, while there is turmoil in the administration and it's not really clear what's happening, it's still important to particularly apply for these grants that are set aside for tribes, because again, that's part of the trust responsibility. All right, next. And Candace, if you can hear me, can you just type in the chat? I just want to make sure that we are live and everybody is able to hear us and things like that. So, all right. So I've got a couple of things I want to talk about writing grants real quick before we get to the grants. First thing I wanted to talk about is planning. So I developed a go or no-go worksheet that helps tribes determine whether or not they actually have the capacity or can apply for a grant. And it's basically just a list of questions. And oh, good, great. And I will send that out in an email after this webinar. If anybody's interested in, it's a PDF. It really helps you sort of clarify whether or not this grant is the right opportunity for you and whether or not you can apply for it. The next thing you want to do is develop an excellent team. This is a group of people who are going to help you write this grant, who are going to help you find the important information you need to be able to be accurate with this grant, things like that. And so I always say, don't have the person who's voluntold to be, oh, you cannot hear me. Okay, Larita says she cannot hear me. All right, I'm going to just refresh the webinar and hopefully that will help with the sound situation. I'm so sorry about this. All right, so hopefully you can hear me now. And we'll get back to the grants webinar. All right, so the next step that you want to take is that you want to make a timeline. So you start with the deadline and you work your way backwards is the best way to make the timeline for the grant. So the deadline is April, if the deadline's April 30th, then you want to apply almost a week before, if you can. The reason for this is that programs are notorious for not working. And when you get into those portals, everybody else is trying to apply at the same time at the last minute. If it doesn't work for you, then there's usually not a lot of leeway in terms of whether or not you get an exception to being late with a grant. So always plan to apply at least a week in advance. Also, many of these grants require some kind of resolution from tribal council. So when is your tribal council meeting? When can you get in front of them and have them write the resolution? These are important things to add to the timeline to determine when you make this, when you put the work together to make this grant happen. And then, for example, in this example, your first draft would need to be done by March 10th, because other people also want to take a look at the materials that you write and go over it and correct things. So really important to do planning ahead, things like that. Okay, the next thing you want to do is make a project plan or a charter. This is writing things out, basically saying we are planning on doing these activities, these things to get these things done. I also have an example of that. I'll send in the email to folks after this webinar. And then you need to either sign up for a sam.gov account or find out who in your tribal government has the sam.gov account. And that will be the person who is usually applying, because you usually need to have that in order to apply for these federal grants. Can folks still not hear me? If I could get some kind of chat. Candace said she could hear me and Larita said she couldn't. I'm hoping I fixed that problem. Here's what the sam.gov looks like. And it's just, what the federal government requires for when you apply for most grants. Sometimes you'll apply through the actual agency's portal. I wanted to talk a little bit about writing a narrative for your grant project. This is one of the hardest things that I find to be able to do. You have to write descriptively about why you need this money. And that's hard for us, to talk about why you would need money for a project. Also, you need to include everything in the NOFO, notice of funding, that's listed. They'll give you a list of what needs to be in the narrative. And if it says every single person in the tribe must love pizza in order to qualify for this grant, then you need to write every single person in our tribe loves pizza. We did a survey and the survey said pizza, 100%. You have to be that explicit with it because a lot of times people who are reviewing these grants are literally writing, did they say yes, no, yes, no, points, things like that. And so if you don't spell it out one by one in the notice of funding, then basically it's not likely to pass go. Have somebody else read over what you write. And also, this is the time when we need to be explicit about our situations. We need to talk about the challenge of not having broadband. We need to talk about how challenging it is to have a highway that has, 15 traffic deaths per year from the tribal community alone. And therefore, that's why we've got to make these changes, why we need this funding, those kinds of things. So don't be afraid to be very descriptive in what the actual problem is here, because you may think, oh, it's obvious what the problem is in our community, but the people reading the grant, they don't know that. All right. So here's the grants that I found that are the deadlines. Some of the deadlines are fast approaching and some are a little bit further out. So let's start with the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA. The Community Connect grant is, the deadline for that is April 21st. And this grant is really interesting because it offers an opportunity to build out broadband projects for rural, economically challenged communities that basically have no service, or you have to have 10 megabits per second down and 1 megabit per second up or less, which is not a lot. So basically we're talking about like communities that only have DSL, things like that. There is a 15% match for this. And that means that, you will need to go to council and ask for 15% to be kicked in order for this to work. You also have to provide broadband to essential community facilities, which are like firehouses or things like that, free of charge for 2 years. And the funding for this one is $100,000 to $5 million and a 3-year project period. So something to think about. April 21st is coming up. And basically, you need to provide, the final outcome is that you actually need to provide 100 megabits per second down and 20 up on to all the premises in the area that you want to serve. Let's go to the next one. Community Wildfire Defense Grant. This is something that's important to Amerind because, we're trying to protect your homes. We're protecting your tribal communities. And it's important for everyone to have a community wildfire protection plan. So this funding, the deadline is March 14th, and it's to develop or revise a community wildfire protection plan or to create implementation projects to prevent wildfire or to implement your plan. There is a 10% match for developing or updating the plans and a 25% match for implementation. But I did read that tribes can request a waiver for that match. So this is definitely an ideal grant to have. It has to be in an area that's identified as having a high or very high wildfire hazard potential. Has to also be a low income area and maybe have been impacted by a severe disaster in the previous 10 years. And the award ceiling is 10 million, but the average is about 250,000 for if you're trying to write community wildfire protection plans. So definitely something to take a look at. I'm going to send out this the slides to this so you can have the emails and contact information for all of these grants that I'm talking about today. Okay, we've got the Bison Production and Marketing Grant Program, and I'm pretty jazzed about this one. You know, bison, producing bison is something that's near and dear to Plains tribes. And I like this one because also it has no match, which is important, you know, coming up with those hard-earned funds from your tribe to match these grants can be very challenging. The deadline is March 26th. It's for marketing and branding assistance, research into bison production, product development, supply chain innovation, marketing, other priorities identified through consultation and engagement with the bison producers and stakeholders. So I should say that this is tribes are eligible, but they need to be bison producers in order to qualify for this grant. Also, you can get money for product innovation, development or facilitation of general information websites, webinars, conferences, trainings, plant tours, or even field days where, you know, if you want to have groups of kids come by and check out your bison ranch, you can get funding to do this. All right, a few additional USDA grants: the Rural Energy for American Program Renewable Energy Systems and Energy Efficiency Improvement Guaranteed Loans and Grants. Funding is, the deadline is March 31st specifically for the Farm Bill funding. Distance learning and telemedicine grants, March 6th. And this is to be able to improve distance learning and telemedicine. It's another one of those specific broadband grants that's available to tribes that is definitely worth taking a look at. Rural business development grants. Okay, that one's due tomorrow. So I'm guessing most folks don't have time to put that together, but I had to put this in there. It's an opportunity and enterprise grant. So the enterprise grants are used on projects to benefit small and emerging businesses in rural areas. And, you know, for a tribe to be able to have some funding to encourage economic development for small businesses in an area, I think is something that's really important. And there'll probably be another round opening of these grants. So just, you know, something to have in your back pocket to look at for the future. Okay, moving on to health and human services. Health and human services. So we've got behavioral health workforce education and training program for paraprofessionals. That's due March 18th. Now, the interesting thing about that one is that it's training people who aren't professionals in behavioral health to help out, basically. And so if you want to create like a program for that, that's definitely something that, you know, having behavioral health professionals in Indian country is critical. We've got the Native American Language Preservation and Maintenance, or Esther Martinez Immersion grants. April 14th is due. I love that a language grant is in health and human services. I think, you know, for any healthy community, we do need to have language preservation going on. The Environmental Regulatory Enhancement Program, I thought this one was pretty interesting. So it provides funding for the costs of planning, developing, and implementing programs designed to improve the capability of tribal governing bodies to regulate environmental quality pursuant to federal and tribal environmental laws. So you're getting help being able to meet environmental laws. And then the Pathways program, Rural Communities Opioid Response Program, focuses on behavioral health care support programs while offering behavioral health career pathways opportunities for rural communities. Again, very important, particularly in communities that are really struggling with the opioid crisis. Department of Homeland Security, there were not that many listed, but I did put two in here. We've got the fiscal year 2025 Safeguarding Tomorrow through ongoing risk mitigation revolving loan fund program. Also the fiscal year 2024 Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities, or BRIC. This one is for hazard mitigation activities. It goes up to 150 million. And those are due on April 18th. And then the fiscal year 2024 flood mitigation assistance is to reduce or eliminate the risk of repetitive flood damage to buildings and structures insured under the National Flood Insurance Program and within the National Flood Insurance participating communities. So if you have National Flood Insurance, this will help with reducing or eliminating the risk of repetitive flood damage. So something important to look at as well. Just 2 Department of Justice grants are listed right now for tribes. Financial year 25, U.S. Department of Justice Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation. So this one is a broad grant program with a bunch of smaller grant programs inside of it. They basically put them all together for tribal court programs to address areas of public safety, criminal and juvenile justice, substance use related crime, access to treatment and recovery support, including tribal healing and wellness courts, the needs of victims and survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. So the deadline is coming up March 18th for that one. Definitely take a look at that, particularly if you are running a tribal court program. And then we also have the Support for Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program. That deadline is March 3rd, right around the corner. And that one has to do with updating sex offender registries. Okay, couple of I think I just have one Department of Labor grant, but I thought this one was really interesting. It's the Cybersecurity Upskilling Initiative. This one isn't actually open yet. It opens on April 15th and closes on June 29th. So plenty of time to prepare for this one. The Cybersecurity Upskilling Initiative will fund job training that upskills incumbent and dislocated workers who already have information technology credentials and experience, but need additional qualifications and specialization to meet employer demand for high skills cybersecurity occupations. Grants will be awarded to sector partnerships and design and implement cybersecurity training programs. So if your tribal college or your tribe itself wants to develop a cybersecurity upskilling training program, there is between 2.5 and 5 million available per grant to do this. And I think this is pretty interesting. We have every day we hear of another breach of a tribe, and we've got to we have to keep working hard at protecting our tribal businesses, our tribal communities, our tribal governments from, some pretty nasty criminals out there. Next. Okay, so here's some other Department of Labor programs that I found. The Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, the Incarcerated Veterans Transition Program, and the Homeless Women's Veterans and Homeless Veterans with Children Reintegration Grant Program, which is collectively referred to as the HVRP. So this one is to enable Americans veterans to reach their full employment potential and obtain high quality career outcomes for veterans experiencing or at the risk of homelessness. And, we have disproportionate number of veterans in Native America, and we need to take care of them. So if the tribe wants to put together a program to help homeless Native veterans, there's money for this. This is March 17th is the deadline. And the email for this one is hvrpfoa@dol.gov. I will note that these are this one and this Pathway Home that I'm going to talk about in a second, both had notices on them that they were, while the application was still open, they were being reviewed because of President Trump's diversity and equity ban, to see if there was any conflict with the initiative or the ban on any kind of diversity and equity programs. But it's not taken down yet, so I think it's still worth looking into. Pathway 6 is a reentry program for incarcerated individuals. And again, it's being reviewed. March 14th is the deadline for that one. And, keep an eye on it because it may not be taken down. It may still qualify, despite President Trump's initiative to cut diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, we've got Department of Interior. There's a bunch of Department of Interior grants, all due in March and May. And then I've got a couple here that are due in September. And I pulled just a few out to talk about them more, but you can see the list here of all of the Department of Interior grants that are coming up that are still available for tribes. So we've got the Endangered Species Conservation Wolf Livestock Loss Compensation and Prevention Grant. I thought this was really interesting. It's for livestock producers. You can do programs to prevent killing wolves, or you can get reimbursed if a wolf kills your livestock. And the deadline for that is towards the end of March on the 28th. The ABPP Preservation Planning Grant is due March 31st. And this one is pretty interesting. It's for the preservation of historic battlefields in the United States. And so if your tribe has a historic battlefield, or you want to designate a historic battlefield, there's funding to be able to do that. NAGPRA consultation and documentation grants due the 31st, and the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act of 1990. These are for projects to basically return Native American remains that are in federal museums, except for the Smithsonian. That's that law, and there's funding to be able to, because tribes, there's a lot that goes into repatriation and it's not cheap. We've got the Indian Highway Safety Law Enforcement Grant that's due May 1st. This is implementing traffic safety programs and projects that are designated to reduce the number of traffic crashes, deaths, injuries, and property damage within these populations. This is an important grant program for your Department of Transportation. And then the Indian Highway Safety Occupant Protection Grant. This one opens March 18th. It's not quite open yet, and it's due May 1st. The purpose of this notice is to solicit applications for the Rural and Tribal Assistance Pilot Program grant. A total of $27 million is available to award for planning and design phase activities for developing transportation projects in rural and tribal communities. Grants will support the hiring of staff expert firms to provide technical, legal, and financial assistance to advance transportation projects that would be reasonably expected to be eligible for select Department of Transportation discretionary grants or credit programs. And there's no local match required to participate in this program. So another one you definitely want to take a look at. I think I have some more Department of Interior coming up. Yeah. All right. So we've got the Coastal Program financial year 2025. This is not due until September. This program is based on helping coastal areas with technical and financial support to address complex conservation challenges of priority coastal ecosystems. And the support is mainly provided through cooperative agreements. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what cooperative agreements are versus grants. A cooperative agreement grant is a type of financial aid that involves the federal agency working with the grantee to achieve a specific goal. It's a form of a grant that differs from traditional grant in the federal agency in that the federal agency is way more involved in the project. So a grant, you write the project, you say, this is what we're going to do, and they say yes or no, and they give you the funding, and you still have to follow rules and regulations and things like that. But a cooperative agreement involves a lot more effort, where they actually come in and say, actually, maybe you should do it like this, or here's the support that we have for you, things like that. So there's through the Department of Interior, there's these Partners for Fish and Wildlife cooperative agreement, and then this coastal program that look interesting. Take a look at. And that's it. If there's anybody has any questions, you can type them in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about grants. Otherwise, I will send an email to everybody who signed up for this with this slideshow, as well as some of the other materials that I talked about. And coming up next, we have a fire prevention webinar. That's going to be on March 13th, I believe. And then later in the month, we are going to have a webinar on managing your files. If you save everything on the desktop, like I do, you want to tune in to this one, because Nick from our IT department is going to show you how to stop saving everything to the desktop and be able to find things that you need. So very useful. And of course, Felix talked a little bit about, we are soliciting, we have a survey out right now. I'll send it in the email that I send after this webinar. And we'd love to hear from you what kind of topics, webinar topics, you would like us to cover. So definitely fill that out, and we will get those topics going. All right. Well, thank you all so much for attending today. And like I said, I will send an email out shortly with all of these grants listed, as well as some additional information. And have a wonderful day.